which coaches have the most to prove in 2024? And I got a list of 5 here, and I think we all got some pretty strong candidates here. So I'm going to jump straight into number 5, go to number 1. So at number 5, I have Michigan head coach Sharon Moore. He's got a lot to prove. He's got to prove that A, he can do this without Jim Harbaugh. B, he can do this without Jim Harbaugh's team. And C, he can do this without Jim Harbaugh's staff. A lot of without Jim Harbaugh in there, but this is also a really interesting year for Michigan because they're coming off of winning a national championship. Sharon was a very important piece of that national championship team, even being head coach for 4 of their wins and grooming J.J. McCarthy, grooming what might be the deepest offensive line unit for a single year that the NFL draft has ever seen. They're going to have 7 guys selected in April, and being the first black man to be head coach at the University of Michigan is just a big deal, and we're all going to remember how it goes, right? It's the biggest deal for me since Tyrone Willingham took over Notre Dame, and that went pretty well at the start, right? So I think Sharon is in a good spot, but he's got work to do, right? He's hired some really great people. He elevated Kirk Campbell. He's got Wink Martindale in there. They're going to keep trying to do the same Baltimore Ravens style of defense that they had been. I don't expect them to change their offense at all. I expect them to try to figure out who the quarterback is going to be, what their tailback situation is going to be behind Donovan Edwards, and if they have some answers for guys like Roman Wilson out there at wide and see what they can do on that. But he's got a lot to prove in this being his first opportunity to be a head coach and following a national championship season. Number 4 on the list, I got Lincoln Riley at USC. This is a huge year for USC as it is entering the Big Ten for the first time, but also a big year for Lincoln Riley because he has had to fire the second defensive coordinator he has ever hired and the one that he has been with the longest in Alex Grinch last year. They were just giving it up. And no matter how many points that USC could score with the reigning Heisman winner at quarterback, they could not score enough to get to 10 wins. And now we're looking at a Lincoln Riley who has not made the Pac-12 championship game and will never make the Pac-12 championship game, hasn't made a college football playoff since leaving Oklahoma, and while can still recruit the hell out of this sport and develop the hell out of the quarterback position, just hasn't been able to get into this conversation of college football playoff teams. While Steve Sarkisian has made that move at Texas, one of the reasons he's not on this list. Kalen DeBoer leapfrogged Lincoln Riley at Washington, showing that doesn't matter what level he's coaching at, he's going to get it done. So now that Riley went and got Danton Lynn and Matt Entz, my goodness, just put together a staff on that defense that is studded. He's got to get some production out of those guys. They have to show up ready to compete. They're going to play a really difficult schedule, which while also having, I believe, not just the Big Ten on this schedule, but still Notre Dame. And there's one big non-conference in there, but I don't want to get ahead of myself and get that one wrong. I'm just going to say that USC's got a tough schedule, right? And if Miller Moss is your guy, then fine. I'm not going to second guess Lincoln Riley on who he selects to be his starting quarterback, but it does say a lot that until Miller Moss threw for a billion yards and 6-7 TDs, yeah, we thought that Will Howard might end up there or that Riley was going to go into the portal and bring out somebody else that could spin it. He still might, given how spring practice might go, but Malachi Nelson decided he didn't want to stick around. He's at Boise State where he's going to get offense coordinator Dirk Cutter, which, again, NFL guys coming back to college, that's kind of fun. I think Lincoln Riley has a lot to prove this year, and going into what I think is going to be a pivotal year, not just for the Big Ten, but for the fortunes of SC as they're joining it with Oregon and Washington. Man, it's going to be tough for them, and he's going to have to pull this out. Number 3 on the list for me, LSU coach Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly left Notre Dame because he did not believe he could win a national championship at Notre Dame. In that way, he and Lincoln Riley basically shared the same idea. They left one program that was in a great position that did make the college football playoff to go to another program because they believed that they would have the infrastructure to not just make the playoff, but to win the whole damn thing. So far, neither one of those guys has sniffed the college football playoff since taking the job. And only one of those guys made a conference championship game. And in that game, LSU got boat raced by Georgia. Also in here, Brian Kelly had a better quarterback in 2023 than Lincoln Riley, as evidenced by the Heisman winner being at LSU and Jaden Daniels, which is another way of me saying, if Brian Kelly had Jaden Daniels, who put together one of the greatest statistical seasons that we have ever seen, and couldn't so much as make the playoff, what can I expect from him in a much more loaded and much more powered SEC as Ole Miss is doing to LSU what Washington did to USC? Lane Kiffin's out in front. Okay? They're in a great spot. They won 11 games for the first time in school history last year, and they got stronger in 2024. And they should feel good about their chances of competing for the SEC championship, which is not a small thing, especially given what LSU wants to be, who they have to be, and how bad those fans really want it. I think there's a lot of pressure on Brian Kelly because now you getting into the time for which LSU fans going to be like, hey, dog, clock been ticking. All right, Ed Orgeron can get this done. Ed Orgeron can get this done. You trying to tell us you can't get this done? Les Miles can get this done. Okay? We're not saying you got to be Nick Saban because nobody is, but he got it done too. So I think after this year, if it doesn't go the way that it's planned, I would not be shocked to hear people start muttering Brian Kelly. I don't know, dog. I don't know. So he's got a lot to prove in 2024. Number 2 on the list, Colorado coach Deion Sanders. Now, I'm going to be watching this as closely as I did 2021, as closely as I did 2022, because Prime is, as he says, box office. And he makes a really good point. If he was the head coach at Florida State, you probably don't leave out Florida State in the college football playoff. And that's got everything to do with appeal and what you believe. And remember, at Jackson State, that was the slogan. Slogan is, I believe, right? That was what college football playoff selection committee members were saying about Florida State. I don't believe, for one reason or another, right? Now, they would say we just think Alabama is a better football team than an undefeated Florida State. But if Coach Prime was out there campaigning for the team he thinks of as his alma mater, right? Florida State, I think that would have gone a wrong way because that's what that room is about. That room is about votes. We forget this. But at the end of the day, the people in that room on that college football playoff selection committee are voting on who they think are the 4 best teams. And if he can influence your vote with a good stump speech or several, he will. Now, this is also a man who sees the expansion of the playoff to at least 12 teams. We've been hearing talk of even 14 and 16 at this point because they can't settle on a number just yet or settle on an amount to pay for this thing, that he believes Colorado can make the playoff right now. He doesn't see why they couldn't because there are more slots, more opportunities, and they're moving to a conference that I don't think is easier to win than the Pac-12 was last year, though the Pac-12 was really stout. I just think that from 1 to 16, you can make an argument for almost everybody in the Big 12, including Colorado, and there's not really a runaway favorite in that league. Like right now, we're talking about Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State really being the teams that might lead the way in the Big 12. But also remember, Texas Christian came off a 5-7, played the national title game against Georgia in a year where nobody expected Sonny Dykes and Texas Christian to be about much of anything. In addition to other teams that we just don't think about being good until it's time to play them. Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State. It's just going to be tough, right? He's got a lot to prove with Shedeur going into a draft-eligible year, Shiloh being draft-eligible, choosing to come back, Travis Hunter going into a draft-eligible year. He needs those dudes to show up and play. More than that, he needs Phil Lodeholt to put an offensive line out that can protect the quarterback, and he's going to need Robert Livingston to put a defense on the field that can keep people under 28, because that's what it feels like. It feels like they're going to just give it up, and then Shedeur going to have to throw for 500 and 5 TDs to go get them these wins, but they're capable. I think if Prime can flip around the first losing season that he has suffered as a head coach in this sport, that's going to be tremendous. But if he goes 4-8 a second time, we might have to start talking about him a little bit differently. He knows that better than anybody else. And then at number 1, Ohio State head coach Ryan Day. This is going to be the 2024 top of line topic for me. What is Ohio State going to do, not in 2024 per se, but on November 30th in Columbus when the Michigan Wolverines show up to the shoot? Okay? All right. It's going to be raucous. It ought to be. But Ohio State fans are nothing if not smart. Like, yeah, they want it. And yeah, they're a little bit irrational. They understand that, but they also, that's what it is. They don't hide that. They're also smart enough to tell you, hey, we know what you have on this roster. Okay? We know what Michigan lost. We know Jim Harbaugh ain't there no more. And you got a first-year head coach, period. This is the year you got to win that game. Now, granted, Ohio State won 10 of these before they started to lose one. They've lost the last 3, but they've been on his watch. And each one has really mounted on more pressure for Day. And I say November 30th because there has never been a time for which we have thought the game was irrelevant, right? But the idea that you could lose the game, make the playoff, and then damn near beat the national champions on a missed field goal, and people still not give a damn, I don't know that there's more pressure than that. And then he lost the game a second year or third year. Going into 2024, he's pulled out all the stops. He has handed over the play calling privileges for the first time. He's never done that to his mentor, to the guy that he trusts to call the plays as well as he might in Chip Kelly. He reinforced the roster. They go 4 deep. Like, we keep going on this, and we will. But I think nobody has more to prove in 2024 than Ryan Day.
If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.